Professor Yasuda pumps up his students for the holidays by telling them to get freaky on the beach or something like that. He doesn't get the desired response because, let's be honest, that's a creepy thing for a teacher to say. Anyway, after he leaves, Hori Kyoko and her friends gather to talk about him. She shares her experience of how he tried to cheer her up. The prof had told her that he liked flat-chested girls, so she shouldn't lose hope. Ouch. But for real, she's flat as a tabletop at a carpentry contest. Her friends try to invite her for karaoke and even try to give her email to someone else, but she turns down both fronts. Then comes Izumi Miyamura, the depressed virgin boy with overgrown hair, who helps her pick up her phone. He leaves immediately after, and Yuki asks Toru about him. Unfortunately, he has no idea that Miyamura is Batman. Soon enough, Hori runs off, and her friends think it's because she has a boyfriend, but she just enters her maid mode and begins to vacuum the entire house. She gets a call from her employer, also known as her mother, and she promises to make dinner. She leaves the cleaning to pick up Suta, her younger brother, and crosses paths with Miyamura on the way back. Some other day, Suta comes home with a nosebleed and a gothic dude on his arm. Weirdly, that's Miyamura. Dude has 9 piercings and probably has some more where the sun doesn't reach. Anyway, Hori is startled to see the stranger and asks him to stay so she can thank him. As they talk, he calls out her name, shocking the life out of her. She asks if they go to the same school, so Miyamura introduces himself. Hori just can't understand how he and the boy from school are the same person. That's because Miyamura is Batman. Don't worry, guys, I have proof. She's so freaked out by this secret that it spills into the next day at school. She calls him aside and invites him over again using Suta's name. What a wuss. Mr. Punchcard blushes because he never expected to hear nice things from Hori, and he reveals that his piercings will show if he wears his hair up. Later that day, she keeps staring at him as he plays with her brother. She's still surprised by how two-faced he is. She scrolls through a grocery ad, and Miyamura comes so close to her that her heart speeds up beneath her flat chest. She avoids eye contact and brags about getting a truckload of eggs if the school committee doesn't call for a meeting. Guess what? The committee waits until closing time to steal Hori's last sliver of hope. She immediately texts Batman and makes a run for it. Miyamura has no choice but to hurry, seeing as the sale ends in 20 minutes. He pulls a Clark Kent as he takes off his clothes and runs at the same. He then skips the school fence in slow-mo, thank you, Mr. Producer, and crosses paths with Yuki as the race to the grocery store continues. Later that night, he begs Hori that he'll never fight against housewives for another sale. She prepares dinner as all women should, and they sit to eat. He reveals that he saw Yuki, and this makes Miss Tabletop admit that she doesn't want anyone to see this side of him. As you all know, he's Batman. She gets shy and leaves to fetch some cold cola. When she returns, Miyamura also returns the gesture, but in more romantic words. She can't contain herself, so she quickly gives them the drinks and buries her head as it turns red. Suta bets some money on the fact that she can't stop saying the word dummy after she says it once, and the youngster cashes out big time. It turns out that Miyamura will be swimming in PE, so he rushes to complain to Hori about it. She wonders why he's scared until she discovers that his entire left side is tatted up. Yeah, Batman is a baddie, who knew? They discuss the dilemma outside of class, leaving Yuki and Toru to stew in jealousy. Immediately, Hori gets called away. Toru tries to mark his territory. He tries asking some cowardly questions, and this helps Miyamura deduce that he's crushing on Hori. At the mention of this, Toru begins to freak out and begs our boy to keep it a secret. A passing student yells for them to get to PE, and both boys head to the locker room. There, Batman reveals himself to Toru and shows him his tattoos and piercings. The jock realizes that he has been the loser all along and begins to take notes of things Hori likes in Miyamaru. While everyone is at PE, Toru asks Miyamura if he could be Robin. Well, not really. He checks in if it's fine to ask Hori out, and our boy quips that it's ultimately her decision. Afterwards, Yuki punches the hell out of Toru for skipping gym duty, and Hori notices that Miyamura hates flat-chested girls, because why else will he be avoiding her? Toru interrupts them and asks Hori to meet him after school. She's about to decline when Batman offers to pick up Suta. She talks with Toru, but the producers cut the audio. You know what that means. Later on, she meets Suta and Miyamura at home and calls him aside for a chat. She then accuses the Bat of telling Toru that they're not a good match. She begins to weep when Miyamura confirms this, and her crying becomes anger. She headbutts him and goes on to beat his ass for thinking they can't remain close. After she calms down, they kneel before each other, and she reveals that she turned poor Toru down. Dude couldn't compare to a superhero. Miyamura escorts Hori to go get some groceries, and she overhears an anime theme song. The dweeb immediately sings along and falls shy when our boy points it out. She denies liking anime and blames it on Suta. The worst part is that she's not updated enough to know any popular music. Well, she gets home that day and is surprised to see her mother. Yes, I too have been wondering if they're orphans. She gives her mom a shoulder rub as Suta tells her all about Miyamura. Of course, she's interested in our boy, so she asks Hori about him. She describes him as a villainous character when in fact he watches over Gotham at night. Anyway, her mom wants to meet him, and this makes her discover that she doesn't know Miyamura's first name. It disturbs her even when she gets to class, and she thinks up various hopeless scenarios to ask his name. She ends up peeping into the boys' locker room in hopes that someone will mention his first name. Yuki thinks she's pent up, and I agree. Hori needs to get some. After school, she tries the results board, but Miyamura isn't smart enough to have his name up there. She then tries asking Toru, but the wuss cries as he runs away with a broken heart. At dinner, her mom notices that she's not eating, so she asks about Miyamura to spice things up. She talks like she wants some of that Batman loving, though. This makes Hori conclude that she'll get to know his first name when her mom asks him for it. Unfortunately, when Miyamura arrives, Hori is out on errands. Her mom welcomes him warmly, and they talk before Suta comes. She then thanks him and returns to work. Hori arrives much later and boils at her mother's coup. She drills him concerning what him and her mom spoke about, and our boy admits that she's been acting weird. Miss Tabletop finally tells him the reason why, and he laughs at her lame ass. Suta even gives support. Miyamura then writes his name on a piece of paper, and she tries pronouncing Izumi. It weirds her out, so she decides to stick with his last name. In turn, she asks what her first name is, and yes, our boy easily gets it, sending her into instant depression. They take the opportunity to laugh at her lame ass yet again. The next day, some Sengoku dude from the student council politely dumps all of his work on Hori, and she's stupid enough to accept it. Yuki meets her with eye bags so dark you'd think she was a panda, and it's obvious to everyone that Sengoku is using her. Miyamura reveals that the dude is at the top of the class and that all the girls like him. Just then, Ayasaki, another gorgeous but flat-chested girl, drops by to collect the notes from Hori. Turns out she's dumb and also Sengoku's girlfriend. They've been making Hori do all of her work. After she leaves, Ayasaki bumps into Miyamura in the hallway and leaves him with a budget report as she rushes away. The next day, he meets a ruckus in the school hallway. Apparently, Sengoku is blaming Hori for misplacing the budget report, and Ayasaki hides behind him in denial. The whole thing is a debacle, but they embarrass Hori and ask her to apologize. This pisses off Batman, so he takes off his glasses and hands his bag to Toru before stopping Hori from apologizing. He grabs Sengoku and headbutts him into the past. Before he can complain, our boy presents the budget report and exposes Ayasaki for abandoning it. She remembers and curls up in tears, leaving Sengoku and Sakura to apologize instead. Afterwards, Miyamura asks if Sengoku has any dirt on Hori, and she gets all weird about it, sweating and lying that they've only known each other since childhood. In truth, she used to bully him so badly that if it got out, her reputation would be ruined. He threatened to expose her if she doesn't do as he says, and it's obvious to her friends that Sengoku has dirt. Anyway, his run-in with Batman left him traumatized, as it should. Over a game of table tennis, Toru and Miyamura discuss Hori's birthday coming up on March 25th, during spring break. They continue to play, as Toru admits that he doesn't know what to get her. The other students grow beards as they wait for someone to fail, and it dawns on Miyamura that he also doesn't know what to get Miss Tabletop. Suta and Hori have dinner, and the youngster asks if Miyamura will continue to come over. This question hits Hori quite deeply, and her brother makes it worse when he claims that he'll be sad if Batman stops visiting. She also admits it, and her brother mocks her. On Hori's birthday, Suta hands her a hand drawing that Picasso would be jealous of, and Miyamura hands a mixtape of the latest pop songs. She really likes her present and wonders how he knew it was what she wanted. As a child, Miyamura's peers found him weird and even refused to pair with him. The same thing happened when he got into middle school. That was when he took a safety pin and pierced his ears himself. If this doesn't sound like a villain's origin story, I don't know what is. Luckily, he grew up to become a hero. Anyway, Hori was the first person to actually call him a normal person, and this made him feel like she was the weird one. Present day, and everyone's checking to see which class they're in for the third year. Hori and Yuki end up in class 1, and when Miyamura and Toru end up there too, Toru claims that it's the power of love. He doesn't beat the gay allegations after that. The whole group then converses, but Batman feels left out. Their first chemistry class involves a group project, and the trauma of not being picked comes to Miyamura. To his surprise, Hori, Yuki, and Toru pull their chairs close to him, and Hori disperses duties to everyone. For some reason, our boy still feels left out. He then heads to the roof where Toru joins him and asks for his opinion on something. Miyamura wasn't listening, so he changes the topic and asks what Toru thinks about him. He thinks our boy is annoying, frustrating, and weirdly, he thinks Miyamura is prettier than most girls when he takes off his glasses. I think Hori sensed that Toru liked boys, and that's why she turned him down. Anyway, he points out that Miyamura is the only one who calls him by his last name, so Batman tries it out and becomes embarrassed afterwards. The bromance gets deeper when Toru tells him that it's okay to be weird. He then calls him Izumi, and our boy literally claps his cheeks. Afterwards, Hori flicks both their foreheads for skipping working on their report. She gets creeped out when she learns why and calls them both idiots. She laughs when Toru insults Yuki, and this brings a smile to Miyamura's face. Things quickly go back to being weird when Miyamura can't even stay on a first-name basis with Toru. The next day, Sota prepares to leave for grade school super early, so Hori ends up in the school cafeteria on time too. She's bored until Ayasaki joins her at the table and asks if Miyamura is her boyfriend. When she denies it, Ayasaki asks if she can be the Catwoman to our Batman. Hori thinks it through and denies her permission. It becomes an argument, so Hori continues to raise her voice as she promises to never let Ayasaki have Miyamura. Hori heads to class, but he's all she can think about. We knew she always had the hots for him, though. By the time she gets home, Suta has left already, giving her and Miyamura more alone time. They have some tea and watch a scary movie, but only Miyamura is scared. He even gets jumpy when Hori's phone rings. Apparently, her mom's going to stay out late again. It gets worse when the power goes out. Ironic how a bat is scared of the dark. Hori laughs at him when the lights return and threatens that they'll watch 3 more from the horror collection. As she places the CD in the player, Miyamura reiterates that she's double-jointed just like Yuki said. This leads to her intertwining her hand with his. She whispers that she loves him and then lies that she said she loves his hand. 2 can play that game because Miyamura says he loves hers too. He then declares that he loves her, but Hori doesn't say it back this time. Bummer. Anyway, he stays until Suda returns and both boys wash their hands for dinner upon Miss Tabletop's command. The next day, Toru overhears Ayasaki reiterating what happened with Hori when she asked to have Miyamura, and miraculously, our boy appears in class with a bruised face. Won't he do it? He then reveals to Hori and Yuki that Toru is responsible for it. Miss Tabletop is already mad and plans to give Toru a piece of her mind, but she shuts up when he appears with a bandage on his face. Miyamura admits to Yuki that he beat Toru to a pulp, and Toru reluctantly admits the same to Hori. You see, Toru had approached our boy with talk of Hori loving him, and he kept on saying that they were just friends. Toru then came too close to the bat, and his sixth sense pushed him to slap Toru. He apologized immediately, but Toru slapped him back. It became an uneven battle as Miyamura beat Toru like he just escaped Arkham. Yuki and Hori then talk about how both boys cover for each other, and Yuki refuses to tell her friend why the boys were fighting. Sakura loses some notes out the window, and they fall right beside Toru. They both stare at each other like they have shit on their faces. Or maybe they had a moment, I don't know. He brings the notes up to her and commends her for working when no one's watching. She falls shy and thanks him for his help. Afterwards, Toru tracks down Miyamura and gets a cup of melon-flavored treats. He's happy to hear that they're from Hori, but remembers that he's allergic. They then stop Sengoku and make him eat it. All three boys get into a tonguing contest, and Sengoku promises to tell Sakura and Ayasaki about how long Toru's tongue is. Men are simple, too simple. Toru finally discovers Sakura's name and calls out Sengoku for using the student council as an excuse to have a harem. He invites them to come enjoy the air conditioning, and the boys bring Hori and Yuki along. They all play rock, paper, scissors for who will go get the drinks, and the producers make sure it's Hori and Miyamura. While they're away, Ayasaki confirms from Toru if the two of them are dating. Yuki then reveals his crush on her, all to Sakura's dismay. Meanwhile, Miyamura drops a drink, thus wasting more time. Sakura then suggests that both of them must be up to something, and Toru's mind runs wild. They both finally arrive, and Miyamura gets Toru to believe that he and Hori got busy with each other. The poor boy runs to the window and later asks for a pen to stab himself with. Hori keeps up the act, only for Toru to discover the hard way that they were talking about dropping his cola. Sakura then hands him a Kleenex and smiles as he calls her first name. Later that day, Miyamura goes to Hori's place, and her air conditioning is bad. He reveals that he sleeps commando, and this freaks her out. She then discovers that he never gets embarrassed and asks to see his tattoos. Miyamura begins to strip instantly, and it freaks her out even more. She then talks about the whole embarrassment thing, and Miyamura tells her a story to prove that even Batman gets flustered sometimes. Our boy ran into Shindo from middle school, who got held back by the way, and he concluded that Hori was Miyamura's girl. He only got flustered after letting Shindo think so. He apologizes to Hori, and she whispers that she doesn't have a problem with it. Unfortunately, Shindo sends a picture of him and his girl alongside an offer for a double date. He ends it by advising Miyamura to use protection. Mr. Punchcard refuses to let Hori see the text and deletes it immediately. She's half happy that he's worked up and quips that he and Toru seem to be close friends. This makes him shy, and it dawns on Hori that she doesn't really know him. Hori is returning from grocery shipping the next day when she runs into Shindo. Miyamura and Toru catch a glimpse of the situation, and our boy rushes over just to slap the shit out of Shindo. He introduces him in the worst way possible and tells Toru that he doesn't know the dude. It turns out that Shindo goes to the best school, but all Hori cares about is getting somewhere with air conditioning. He then suggests a restaurant, and everyone except Miyamura is down. You see, Shindo was the only one who cared enough to talk to Miyamura when he wasn't yet Batman. He didn't know his name, so he kept trying to guess it right. He even sipped from his juice and defended him to his friends. Shindo changed our boy's middle school experience, but Hori changed his life. So touching, right? Wrong. The next day, Hori comes down with a fever, and Suta has to be the adult. He then makes sure she gets into bed before he heads out. Afterwards, she takes some drugs and passes out. By the time she awakens, Miyamura is by her side with some supplies. He tries to leave to get some water, but she falls out of bed, trying to stop him. She bursts into tears soon enough, thinking that he'll leave just like her mom. He then reassures her that all the crazies in Arkham could chase him, and he still wouldn't leave her side. He tucks her into bed and checks her temperature. He has no idea if she's asleep, but still casually confesses that he has been in love with her. He then gets up and leaves. Afterwards, Hori shoots up in bed. She's so shocked by what she heard that her fever begins to drop. As she lies back down, she wonders if things will stay the way they are if she pretends like she didn't hear him. The next day, Sota leaves his sister at home again, and she heads to the bathroom, thinking about how to face Miyamura after his confession. Meanwhile, Sota sees him talking with another girl on his way to school. No way he's cheating though, I refuse to believe it. Suda gets home that evening and tells Hori all about it. She too begins to suspect that Miyamura is two-timing her, so she drills her brother for more information. The yogurt falls from her hand when she hears that the girl was clinging to Miyamura. She heads to her room and almost texts him about it. Unfortunately, she's too much of a wuss to follow through. Even the next day in school, she quietly asks Toru for Miyamura's location and sits far from it. Toru tells his friend that Hori seems to be avoiding him, but Miyamura denies it and tells him to go on ahead. Meanwhile, Agent Tabletop woefully fails her in her mission to avoid the bat. She screams like, well, a girl when Miyamura turns up behind her. He reveals that he confessed his love because he knew she was awake, but she cuts him off to ask about the girl Suta saw him with. He admits that she's Chika from Yasaka, and Hori gets mad because he never calls anyone by their first name. He explains that Chika is Shindo's girlfriend and that he held her because she twisted her ankle. Hori goes on to slap him silly with a textbook, and then another textbook before stomping off. She gets home and makes up scenarios of him thinking she's a psychopath and is shocked when Suta lets Miyamura inside her house. She shamefully asks him to stay, and he returns the books she almost split his head with. Things take an awkward turn until Hori discovers that Miyamura doesn't even know Chika's last name. They then laugh it off, and Hori admits that she heard everything he said. They're about to share a moment when Kyusuke barges in, cigarette blazing, and asks who the hell Miyamura is. He's Batman, dude. Who are you? He grabs Hori and commends Miyamura's piercings. She then asks him to put out his cigarette. When he doesn't comply, he gets a flying kick on his skull and laments that she shouldn't treat her dad that way. Guys, Hori has a type, and it's her dad. Kyosuke then laments about how he got treated after showing up and asks Hori to get him some food. She reluctantly heads to the kitchen, so Miyamura tries to be respectful. Unfortunately, Kyosuke is a cool dude, maybe too cool. He asks our boy a myriad of uncomfortable questions and gets hit with a plate of food when he asks what Hori was up to when he entered. He continues messing with him until Hori returns. He then asks her if Miyamura is her boyfriend. She hesitates, but ultimately asks if her dad has a problem with that. Dude claims that he doesn't like boys with long hair, so he asks his daughter for bobby pins to help Miyamura tie it up. She smashes them against his head, and whilst they're arguing, her mom comes home. There isn't enough food or utensils for everyone, so Miss Tabletop escorts her boyfriend home. Yes, you heard right, boyfriend. They stroll under the night sky, and Hori grabs his hand. He then intertwines their hands and confesses that he would like to know more about her. She returns the gesture, and it brings smiles to Miyamura's face. They finally part ways by the streetlight, and our boy thanks her for some reason. They both blush, and Miyamura falls to his knees after she leaves. Maybe he failed Gotham. Maybe he didn't TAVO the last episode of Love is Blind. Meanwhile, Toru talks to someone on the phone and thinks he's lame for letting Miyamura one-up him concerning Hori. The sadness follows him to school the next day, and Sakura notices from the window. Ayasaki has to scream before Sakura regains herself. She does everything possible to hide what she was looking at, but Ayasaki kept pressing to know the problem. Apparently, Sakura feels she's ugly and that Ayasaki is too cute to understand. She yells that she wishes she was her and then stomps off. She comes to her senses soon enough and panics when doesn't find Ayasaki in the student council room. The flat-chested devil appears behind her, and Sakura confesses that she likes a guy but doesn't feel cute enough. She blushes like hell, and Ayasaki quips that it makes her look cute. This pushes Sakura to tears. Justice for ugly girls, though. The only things they deserve are short boys. After school, Hori and her boyfriend meet Shu and Toru at the school gate. Miyamura is so weird about it that Toru hits him on the head to squash the weirdness. The couple head home to study English, and Hori makes mention of an Izumi and has to clarify that she meant Suta's friend. Our boy uses the chance to tell her that he'd like her to call him by his first name, and they both blush as she tries it out. Sota asks his dad when he'll be leaving, and his mom also wants to know soon enough. Kyosuke is still on the hot seat when Hori returns with Miyamura. Because of our boy's disguise, her dad doesn't recognize him. He then removes his glasses and parts his hair. After confirmation, he suggests that they take a bath together. Weirdly enough, Hori's mom seconds the idea. Hori is watching a movie when she overhears her dad drilling Miyamura about his Yakuza tattoos. Our boy tries to defend himself, but Hori pretends like she can't hear anything. After dinner, he tries to leave, but Kyosuke insists that he spends the night. Suta wants him to stay in his room, but once again, Kyosuke opts to share a room with our boy. Maybe he knows his secret, that he's Batman. Anyway, as they're about to sleep, he asks Miyamura what he likes about Hori, and he admits that she doesn't judge by appearance. Unfortunately, Kyosuke has drifted off before he can continue. The next morning, Miyamura wakes up feeling like crap, but his day literally brightens when he sees Hori in her gym clothes. They then get ready together and bid the family goodbye. Unfortunately, two of their classmates see them coming out of the house together and spread the news that they're dating. People begin to tease and laugh at them, so Toru and Yuki head up to the roof to talk about it. Toru is mad while Yuki gets so emotional that she cries. Meanwhile, Hori is out in the streets roughing it and shamelessly accepting the relationship. Batman just watches from the shadows. The next day, he appears with his new haircut and his glasses off, shocking the life out of his girlfriend. During recess, the baddies flock towards him, and Hori stares so coldly that they almost freeze to death. Shu tries to hand him a mixtape and also gets the shock of his life. Meanwhile, some girl shamelessly takes Miyamura's picture, so Hori pulls out a whole camera to outdo her. He gets to Hori's place, and it takes a while for her dad to recognize him. He jokes about Miyamura getting dumped, and his daughter scolds him on the spot. Just then, he gets a call from Shindo about some candy. When they link up, they see him holding a huge bag of literal candy. Shindo is so surprised by Miyamura's new look that he bursts into tears and continues crying even in his apartment. Soon enough, Miyamura force-feeds him cheese-flavored sweets, and he turns away to sulk about it. Meanwhile, Hori complains that she got clay-flavored candy. Our boy then locks lips with her to swipe the candy from her mouth, and she literally freezes up. Shindo obliviously asks for some water afterwards, giving Hori more time to process. The next day, some weird girl stares down at Miyamura from a window, and this freaks him and Toru out. She then interrupts Hori as she is thinking about her kiss with Miyamura and asks if he's her boyfriend. After getting confirmation, this child tails our boy until he calls her out in the hallways. She then screams as she asks when he'll break up with Hori. She introduces herself as Sawada Honoka, a second-year student, and promises to be back. True to her words, she tails the couple during break, only to confess that she was in love with Hori first. Well, if Hori wasn't pretty, she'd be one of the boys. Sawada hugs Hori so tightly that every attempt Miyamura makes to pull her away fails woefully. It becomes a full-on struggle, and Toru texts Yuki to come quickly. The struggle is still on when Yuki arrives, and Miyamura quickly drags his girlfriend away when the bell for class rings. After school, Sawada seems to be tailing him, but it turns out that they're next-door neighbors. She forgot her key, so our boy has to invite her in for the meantime. She eats his cake and talks shit about his relationship with her crush. She then admits that he's good at taking care of people, and this makes our boy laugh. Sawada adds that he reminds her of her deceased elder brother, but ends up lying that she was kidding. Her folks arrive, and our boy gives her permission to come by for cake anytime. Afterwards, his mom confirms that the Sawadas lost their eldest boy last year. The next day, he and the Devil Spawn run into each other by the bus stop, but she lies that she isn't waiting for Hori. Some boys try to pick on her, but one glare from Miyamura sends them running. Hori meets the both of them bitching about her and heaves a tired sigh. That night, he watches a horror movie with Hori and her dad. Kyosuke is scared mostly because the girl in the series murders her dad with a chair. He then excuses himself to go buy some smokes, and Hori asks Miyamura why he doesn't make moves on her. He takes this as a yardstick to try and kiss her, but her dad's broke ass interrupts. She then pulls out a chair to reenact the scene from the horror movie.